K98 Talk is expanding its lineup for 2015. This means we are expanding our advertising base. Whether you're a startup trying to push through to the next level or an established business trying to supplement your advertising budget, web-based advertising is a solid investment. Thanks to Talk's newest partnership with TuneIn Radio and instant access to our sister station, K98 FM, we give you worldwide access at a reasonable cost. Interested parties should email us at sales@k98fm.com.
Called the USA, and we fly our flag cause we're proud and free, we're Americans. Red, white and blue is our way of life. Never back down from a challenge or a fight. Nature provides, God gives the rights, we're Americans. We fish the waters and we hunt the lands. We forge the steel with our own two hands. With what we've got, we do the best we can, we're Americans.
It's time now for the Conservative Curmudgeon radio show on K98 Talk. Now, here's Grouchy.
Good evening. I have something to say to you. 41 billion. 41 billion is the dollar total that Barack Obama proposed to spend in Tuesday night's State of the Union address. That's not all he proposed to spend, but that's all I could dig up enough details on to come up with a number. To go with that, he offered exactly $0 in spending cuts. Guess what that means to me and you? That's right. We're stuck paying the bills again. The president wasn't specific with all of his proposals that could have incurred a much bigger bill, like his expansion of the Earned Income Tax Credit and his war against ISIS and cap-and-trade legislation. But the National Taxpayer Union Foundation estimates that the Earned Income Tax Credit expansion will cost $5.6 billion a year. And they're estimating that the cap-and-trade legislation is going to run $56 billion a year. And if you add all that to the already $41 billion that he proposed without cuts, that's over $101 billion in additional spending without tax cuts or any kind of spending cuts. Last week, I gave a quick preview of the State of the Union. Obviously, I didn't know everything that was going to be in the speech, no details, but I think it did a pretty good job of laying out what we were going to see in the form of higher taxes, increased spending. He talked up the middle class, he ignored the poor, and he again started with the class warfare by berating the rich. But enough of patting my back for laying down what he was going to do. Let's get down to some new business, his big plan. 2 years of free community college. Now, we didn't have the details when this plan first broke because there wasn't much of a plan. It was just a thought. But now we have the ideas unveiled of how he intends to pay for this. Once he released the details of how he wanted to pay for it, the liberals were euphorically ecstatic, and the conservatives wondered how we would go about financing it. Well, wonder no more. The president announced a new tax package, including $320 billion in tax hikes. Buried within this proposal is the item picked up by Americans for Tax Reform, the tax increase on families saving for college. See, right now there's this thing called a 529 college savings account that you can set up and pay into for your kids. Works like a Roth IRA. You put money in, the money grows tax-free for college. When it's time, the distributions are tax-free, provided they're used to pay for college. Now, under Obama's plan, earnings growth in a 529 would no longer be tax-free. Instead, earnings would face taxation upon withdrawal, even if the withdrawal is to pay for college. As we discussed last week, it's another wealth redistribution scheme being leveled upon working class America, the people he claims to be the champion for. You know, the people who've been scrimping and saving and planning ahead for their children's college are the ones that are going to foot the bill for those who didn't. This tax hike in particular is very odd, since it's aimed almost exclusively at the middle-class families in America. Kids in the exact demographic the goodies in this tax plan is targeting. The levy in question would increase taxes on the accounts. By definition, these accounts are really only used by middle-class families. Poorer households don't have the extra income to save and invest, and if they have a little bit, there are much higher priorities like retirement or saving for a home. The wealthier families might use 529 plans, but it's far more likely they've got some kind of complex trust arrangement set up for their kids. So according to the Investment Company Institute, which is the trade association for the mutual fund industry, there was $245 billion accumulated in 529 plans in 2014, with just south of 12 million accounts open. That means there's an average balance of about $21,000 per plan. And this is not a mechanism for rich Democrats like the Kennedys or the Gates to shelter wealth. You know, if he wants to target them, let him target them. He's killing middle class. 529 plans tend to be opened by aspirational parents who are on the affluent side of middle class earnings. They're an odd target for a tax increase. But it's what we expect from Obama. But here on page 9 of this document, the president's plan, it says, will roll back expanded tax cuts for 529 education savings plans that were enacted in 2001 for new contributions. This is right before they also announced the repeal of the Coverdell Education Savings Accounts, or the Coverdell ESAs, another similar move against the middle class savings target. One could read too quickly and miss what the document is referring to. Prior to 2001, the Economic Growth and Tax Relief Reconciliation Act, Phase 1 of the Bush tax cuts, 529 plans were far less advantageous than they are now. Money went in after tax and grew tax deferred until college. Upon withdrawal, those earnings were taxed at ordinary income tax rates, which can go as high as 39.6% depending on your earnings. After the tax law change, which was made permanent in 2006, amounts withdrawn to pay for college were totally tax-free. 529 plans and 2006 became the new Roth IRA for college savings. You didn't get an upfront tax break, except maybe on your state income tax. But you could rest assured that your college nest egg's growth would face no taxation when it came time to make those tuition payments. The Obama plan aims to turn back the clock, once again taxing earnings growth and 529 plans as ordinary income. This is a direct and clear tax increase on middle-class families sacrificing to save for their children's college, and it's likely to result in a mass divestment from this type of saving. The law change in 2001 resulted in an explosion in 529 plans, according to College Savings Network. Taxpayers responded to the changes virtually overnight, and assets in 529 plans doubled from 2001 to 2002, going from $13 to $26 billion, and began their fast march to the $250 billion level we see today. The total number of accounts grew from 2.4 million in 2001 to 4.4 million just 1 year later. There's a reason to believe that taxpayers will snap back almost as quickly. You see, we've seen this story before. Prior to the Reagan tax cut of '81, IRAs were simply ways for people to roll over accumulated pension balances. When the law was changed to allow almost any worker to save $2,000 in an IRA and deduct the contribution from his taxes, a very simple and easy idea, ICI reports that new IRA contributions shot up from $4.8 billion in '81 to $28.3 billion in '82. The new contribution inflows continued steadily to increase throughout the first half of the '80s. But then the '86 Tax Reform Act, Congress changed the once generous tax treatment of IRAs. The law change muddied waters, slapping income limits on deductibility, creating a much more complex non-deductible IRA setup. The result was disastrous for savers. Inflows dropped from $38 billion in 1986 to $14 billion in 1987, a reduction that's over 50%. That's gigantic. Gigantic. The figure continued to drift downward from there, only beginning to bottom out when IRA contribution limits were raised in the same law which made 529 plans more attractive. Now, I know I'm moving fast, but you know what? Keep up. Listen, learn. This is good stuff. You need to know it. My child's already done with college. I don't need to know it. But anyway, it was the intention of the proposal, and an odd intention. The tax code should encourage the neutral treatment of savings. All savings should work like 529 plans. You put money in after paying taxes, and then your savings never face taxation again. Raising taxes on the middle class is both bad politics and bad tax policy, and this tax hike should remain dead on arrival when it reaches the GOP-controlled Congress. Fingers crossed. I'm still not 100% sure they found their spine yet. The president's impractical proposal would also increase access to tax-advantaged retirement savings plans by requiring most employers that do not offer such plans to automatically enroll their workers in the IRA. Now, we're going to stop right here because this is something that cannot happen. Listen to these words carefully again. The president's impractical proposal would require employers that do not offer retirement plans or matching IRAs to automatically enroll their workers in a form of an IRA. The government is going to basically force you to have a retirement account, whether you want one or not, much like they force you to have health insurance. I'm imagining that there would be some kind of penalty if you're not enrolled in this new form of IRA. I don't know. We haven't seen details yet. This is still just a proposal. I can't imagine that this is going to fly in Congress. In principle, it's not a bad idea, but a definite overreach by government upon individual freedom that can't be tolerated by any American with frickin' firing synaptic cortexes in their head. Mr. Obama's failed to find common ground with Republicans on fiscal matters, including several attempts to strike a grand bargain on budgets in the past. The Treasury Department proposed a detailed corporate tax overhaul in 2012 that would have lowered our corporate tax rate to 28% from 35% and given multinational corporations a one-time tax holiday to reshore billions of dollars in profits parked overseas. This went nowhere in Obama's democratically controlled Congress. And now Democrats are demanding yet again tax increases on Americans. This never ends. When are these idiots going to get it through their head? I mean, Democrats are like teenage boys on a prom date. They keep asking the same question 80 different ways and always to the same answer. No. The American people don't want to pay higher taxes. We are taxed too much as is. And when you factor in how much of that money they waste, there's absolutely no way we want to give them more. So, step one in this tax plan is a capital gains rate hike, which would raise capital gains and the dividends tax from 23.8% to 28%. Capital gains tax has not been that high since President Clinton signed a rate cut in 1997 at the urging of a Republican Congress. It would represent a massive hike in the rate since Obama took office. When he was sworn in, the rate was 15%. He proposes to nearly double it to 28%. Stealth increases. Number 2, stealth increases. This is the death tax. He wants to raise it from 40 to 60%. Under the current law, when you inherit an asset, your basis in the asset is the higher of the fair market value at the time of death of the decedent's original basis. Almost always the fair market value is higher. But under Obama's proposal, when you inherit an asset, your basis will simply be the decedent's original basis. So here's an example just to get you the right state of mind to read, to understand how this works. Say your dad buys a house for $10,000. He dies and leaves it to you. The fair market value at the date of his death is $100,000. You turn around, sell the house for $120,000. Under the current law, you have a capital gain of $20,000. And that's the sale price of the home less the step up in basis of $100,000. Under Obama's plan, you would have a capital gain of $110,000 with a $120,000 sale price, less the $10,000 basis of the original purchase. Excuse me, fighting off a little bug still. There are exemptions for most households, but this misses the larger point. The whole reason we have a step up in basis is because we have a death tax. If you're going to hold an estate liable for a tax, you can't hold the estate liable for tax again when the inheritor sells it. It adds another redundant layer of taxing and savings on investment. It's a huge tax hike on family farms and small businesses, not to mention that most of these people are truly middle class. It's like a second death tax. The first one has a top rate of 40% and a standard deduction of $5.3 million, 10.6 for a surviving spouse. Conceivably, an accumulated capital gain could face a 40% death tax levy, then a 28% capital gains tax on what's left. And if you do the math, that's an integrated federal tax of just under 60% on inherited capital gains. Ridiculous. I'm telling you, this is the dumbest idea in the world. He's going to cripple people in this country. Next up is a bank tax. A new 7 basis point, that's 0.07%, tax on liabilities, not assets, of the 100 or so U.S. firms with assets over $50 billion. You know what? This doesn't really hurt the banks because what they do is they take this loss and they pass it along to us, the customers. That's how businesses work. That's how banks work. It's the simple rule of businesses don't pay taxes, people do. It's all rolled into the cost of their product. Next up, the tax increase on family savings for college. This is the 529s we talked about. We don't need to go back through that again. And the last one is the tax increase in the retirement plans and that new employer mandate to force you to have a retirement fund, some kind of 401k or IRA or something like that, that's going to take money out of working people's pockets that can't afford it. They're going to be choosing between groceries and light bill, and it's ridiculous because they have to have this account so Obama can tax it. Now that I've spent a good 20 minutes or so slaughtering this ridiculous idea, I wanted to take a minute. I don't know if Mr. Producer is listening or not. Are you there, Mr. Producer? I don't think Mr. Producer's there. That's okay. Give me just a minute here. I am going to come on, iPad. Okay. So if you have any comments, questions, anything that's burning a hole in your head, give me a call. The number is 408-681-8255. That's 408-681-8255. We're going to press on a little bit. We have a little fraud alert from the State of the Union while we're still on that topic, semi on that topic. Many of you who watched, I know many of you didn't, but many of you who did watch may have noticed that there was a lady seated next to Michelle Obama during the speech. She was showcased by the president during the State of the Union as... I'm sorry, what's that? Oh. Sorry, Mr. Producer was chiming in there. Oh, that's okay. I was just going to get you to read out the call number, but I found it and read it out. Thank you, sir. But this lady was showcased as, quote unquote, somebody the president discovered after she wrote to him last March about her economic hardships. And she was supposed to be proof that his, quote unquote, middle class economics are working and that Americans are coming forward to say that his policies are working. Her name is Rebecca Earler. And Rebecca Earler is a former Democratic campaign staffer for Senator Patty Murray in Washington. So, I mean, you know, the unmentioned in the White House bio of Earler that was handed out before the State of the Union speech is the fact that she is a former campaign operative working as a field organizer. Also not in the bio is that this wasn't the first time the White House used the former campaign staffer as a political prop. Per the White House, Obama spent, quote unquote, a day in the life of Earler back in June of 2014 so that he could have an opportunity to communicate with the people he's working for every day. Well, apparently, unless you're attached at the hip to his party, he doesn't work for you. So you can go ahead and just flush that idea. Reuters revealed that Earler's Democratic affiliations at June event at a Minnesota Republican Party they revealed her affiliation following that June event, and the Minnesota Republican Party attacked Obama for being so out of touch with reality that he thinks former Democratic campaign staffers spoke for Minnesotans and Americans for that matter. Obama used Earler as an example that the economy is getting better. Here's the part of Obama's speech, and I'm just going to read it so you don't have to listen to his voice, regarding Earler. Note that her political work goes unmentioned. Here's Obama's speech. 7 years ago, Rebecca and Ben Earler of Minneapolis were newlyweds. She waited tables. He worked construction. Their first child, Jack, was on the way. They were young and in love in America, and it doesn't get much better than that. If only we had known, Rebecca wrote to me last spring, what was about to happen to the housing and construction market. As the crisis worsened, Ben's businesses dried up. so he took what jobs he could find, even if they kept him on the road for long stretches of time. Rebecca took out student loans, enrolled in community college, and retrained for a new career. They sacrificed for each other, and slowly it paid off. They bought their first home. They had a second son, Henry. Rebecca got a better job, and then a raise. Ben is back in construction and home for dinner every night. It's amazing, Rebecca wrote, what you can bounce back from when you have to. We are a strong, tight-knit family who has made it through some very, very hard times. America, Rebecca and Ben's story, is our story. They represent millions who have worked hard and scrimped and sacrificed and retooled. You are the reason I ran for this office. You're the people I was thinking of 6 years ago today, in the darkest months of the crisis, when I stood on the steps of this Capitol and promised we would rebuild our economy on a new foundation. And it's been your effort and resilience that has made it possible for our country to emerge even stronger. What a crock of crap. So basically, what did Obama just say? Did he just confirm that there was a real war on women being waged by Democratic senators that don't pay their staffers enough? Does Patty Murray, is she cheap on her staffers? Why is this lady so bad off? These government jobs. They are, they're pretty good paying jobs, So my thought is, what the hell are they thinking, parading this lady around like she's some example of, the average American? The average American's never been a staffer for a senator. I don't get people. I really don't, and I really don't get this guy. This jackass we have sitting in the White House right now. And, his little comment about not having any more campaigns to run, thank God for that. But as soon as he said that, he took off and hit the campaign trail to pitch his ideas to the country. I think it's something like a 13-city stop, but he started in Idaho today. Nothing against Idaho, but apparently there was some relevant point in the city he went to that he thought he could connect really well with. I wish this idiot well, because he's not making any entrails into America's middle class to pay higher taxes. And anybody that thinks otherwise just needs to put their chapstick on and kiss my ass. Now, enough of that. Let's get into a little bit of fun stuff here. It starts with a little sad note, but some of you know, because you've kept up over the years, that Senator Tom Coburn, who is now retired, he retired at the end of 2014, he did this thing annually that he called Waste Book. And basically it was programs that he identified government spending that was what he considered a waste of money. And I just wanted to highlight some of these items this week. I actually wanted to do this last week, and we ran out of time. So I'm going to blow through a list of probably about a dozen items real quick, and then we're going to take our commercial break. But number one on our list is that we have 318,000 federal employees who owe $3.3 billion in back taxes. Now, we can lump bobblehead Al Sharpton in there and bump that up a little bit because we know he owes back taxes too. But these are federal employees whose paychecks can simply just be garnished and these monies recovered. But he's not doing that. Next up, the Pentagon. The Pentagon spent $1 billion with a B, $1 billion to destroy $16 billion worth of ammunition. You know, seems to me that if we didn't have our soldiers being handcuffed by ridiculous rules of engagement in the Middle East theater, they would have had a use for that ammunition instead of standing around holding hands singing Kumbaya around a little fire while Afghanis, Iraqis, and Yemenis are killing our boys and our girls over there. It's ridiculous. We also have $19 million that are being paid in salaries to suspended federal workers. Now, listen, because this isn't all of them. These are just the ones that have been suspended for misconduct. And the description by Senator Coburn is that this misconduct is bad enough that it would have seen them fired instantly in the private sector. Next, we have an $80 million project called Talos. That's Talos if you want to look it up out there. The Talos suit is for the military, and this is an Iron Man type suit that is barely out of the design phase and is already spiraling out of financial control. $80 million just to get it out of the design phase, folks. What do you think is left for this now that they have to start building it? I'm going to put a price tag on Iron Man. All right, next up, the government, your government, my government, with our tax dollars, is spending $18 million to build a 20,000 square foot museum for the Grammys in Mississippi. Yeah, you heard it right. $18 million to build a Grammy museum in Mississippi. Now, here's a winner. Next up on the list, the Small Business Administration grant of $1.5 million to Disney World to help them renovate their Polynesian resort. Because obviously Disney qualifies as a small business. All right, now we're going to shift gears to some smaller ticket items. These are, it's just as important because these small numbers add up too. They really do. We have a Department of Homeland Security expenditure of $450,000 for high-end gym memberships for their employees. Now, okay, you're thinking Homeland Security, they kind of need to be in shape and fit and all that good stuff. But hey, guess what? Their government health insurance plans already cover them for gym memberships. This is in addition to what we're already paying for. All right, next up, the National Institute of Health is spending $432,000, you're going to love this one, to study homosexual hookup apps for smartphones and tablets and iPads type devices. And what they're interested in trying to learn, allegedly, is if these GPS-based apps help promote risky sexual decisions among homosexuals. It would seem to me that, well, I'm not even going there. I don't know. I'm not one of them, so how would I? All right, next up. This is great. You're going to remember these from when you were a kid and you would thumb through the magazines and comic books and stuff like that. The government spent $50,000 on a study to see whether sea monkey swimming changes the flow of the oceans. Are you freaking kidding me? Sea monkeys swimming, and they want to know if it changes the flow of the oceans. Man. Senator Coburn also cited a largely increasing number of veterans who are now getting disability payments by claiming sleep apnea as a disability. And Senator Coburn said that while they can't put a finger on it because the number changes from month to month, he's thinking this is going to run about $1.2 billion a year. And Senator Coburn, the one I picked for last but not least, was very near and dear to Senator Coburn because it was in his home state of Oklahoma. And what happened here was that the Department of Agriculture gave a $500,000 grant to a town on an Indian reservation to help tribal members start raising and selling butterflies. Now, the $500,000 is enough to provide every member of the town on this reservation a starter kit and still have more than $300,000 left over. Now, Senator Coburn calculated this as of August, however, and the number then was that 50 of the 845 townspeople had signed up to be part of the butterfly program. So where's the rest of this money? Why is our government wasting all this damn money? And who's going to step up and stop them? You know, we sent shockwaves through the electorate in November. We sent what looks on paper to be one of the most conservative Congresses that's been seated in quite a long time. When the hell is the nonsense going to stop? That's what I want to know. And before we move any further, I think we're going to go ahead and set up and take our commercial break. But before we break for the commercial, I'm going to give the call number one more time. It's 408-681-8255. You don't have to talk to me about what I'm talking about. You can talk to me about anything that's on your mind. Just give me a call. And we're going to take a commercial break, and we'll be right back.
America, you and me, ain't that America? Something to see, baby. Ain't that America? Home on the free, yeah.
K98Talk.com, a leader in internet radio. So grab your seatbelts and take the ride of your life on K98Talk.com. K98 Talk is expanding its lineup for 2015. This means we are expanding our advertising base. Whether you're a startup trying to push through to the next level or an established business trying to supplement your advertising budget, web-based advertising is a solid investment. Thanks to Talk's newest partnership with TuneIn Radio and instant access to our sister station, K98 FM, we give you worldwide access at a reasonable cost. Interested parties should email us at sales@k98fm.com.
This is Misty, owner of Wax It Studio in Edmond, Oklahoma, and I'm here to talk to you about a skincare product called Theramedics. Theramedics has a wonderful line of products from anti-aging to hyperpigmentations all the way to acne. In fact, everyone at some point in our life is affected by acne. Acne can cause a great deal of embarrassment and anxiety, and in order to prevent and help other people, I have tapped into this wonderful product called Theramedics. Visit my website at www.prettyskindeep.com. Again, that's www.prettyskindeep.com.
Oh, but ain't that America? You and me, ain't that America? Something to see, baby. Ain't that America? Home on the free, yeah.
And I think we're back live now. All right, great. Well, welcome back to the Conservative Curmudgeon Show. Thank you. Appreciate that. So before we went to the break, I alluded that we had sent a resoundingly clear message at the polls in November, and that we had a new Republican-controlled Congress that went to work. And unfortunately, I'm not real happy with some of their work. See, they've gone to work drafting a new border bill, and what they're doing is they're turning their back on the principles and the people that sent them to D.C. to begin with. Now, we're going to discuss this new border bill a little bit. The bill, as drafted by Republican leaders, and you're going to love this part, it actually requires removal of at least 66 miles of border fencing between laborers in Mexico and employers in the U.S. This border bill only requires the construction of 27 miles of the effective double-layer fencing along the 2,000-mile southern border. Now, just 3 weeks ago, it was the congressional investigators that declared that the 700 miles, that 700 miles of the 2,000 miles on the southern border is still nowhere near secure. Now, excuse me, a staffer on Capitol Hill said that he opposes this particular bill. Now, this is an anonymous staffer, but he said it's remarkable that the direction of our progress is backwards from the goal of building 700 miles of double-layer border fencing in 2006 to only 27 miles in 2015. Now, this staffer continued. He said, where the double-layer fence has been put in, it's worked spectacularly. He said the public is with us about 80 to 90% on this issue, depending on which poll you look at and when. But according to the chairman of the House Committee on Homeland Security, who is Texas Representative Michael McCall, his quote is, "Extra fencing would be a waste of money." Now, per McCall, he says the bill matches resources to needs, putting 27 more miles of fencing where fencing is needed and technology where technology is needed. Now, I don't know what the hell that's supposed to mean other than he's trying to sound impressive and a little bit pompous, probably like an arrogant ass that he most likely is. But he said that conversations with outside groups, experts, and stakeholders taught us that it would be an inefficient use of taxpayer money to complete the fence. He said, we're going to use that money to utilize other technology to create a secure border. Now, I don't know about you, but nothing screams secure border more than double-layered fencing done like Mexico does on their southern border with patrols roving in the middle of it. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. But this House staffer that we're going to come back to here said that McCall's bill doesn't require a major fence because of advocacy action by the Heritage Action for America and from Grover Norquist's Americans for Tax Reform. Now, I haven't seen anything from Americans for Tax Reform on this, but the communications director for Heritage Action for America, his name is Dan Holler, and Dan Holler said in an interview with the Daily Caller that Heritage did not recommend against fencing and that he has no idea where that report came from. But ATR, that's Americans for Tax Reform, that's Grover Norquist's group, is definitely bedded down with wealthy advocates such as former New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg, and is now calling for increased use of foreign workers and residency for illegal immigrants. Folks, if you're giving money to Americans for Tax Reform, you need to pay very close attention to how they're spending it, because I don't think this is what we want to be funding. Senate committee staffers declined to offer any reassurances that senators would modify the bill to fund more fencing and to block Obama's catch and release policy. I had that policy a long, long time ago, when this bill is supposed to come to the Senate in a few weeks. The staffer said, we're going to be looking at everything and we can't give any detail beyond that. Now, if you really want to inspire some feelings of dread and just overall disgust, the Senate bill is being co-sponsored by Arizona Senator Jeff Flake. You may remember him as part of the Gang of Eight, who basically told America to sit down, shut up, and deal with what they want to do with immigration. Now, luckily, that never made it through, but now you kind of know what's driving this. So McCall's bill is being introduced in the Senate, and the plan is to update and improve it as they study the issue through House briefings and hearings, said the Senate staffer, who works for the Senate's Homeland Security Committee. The committee is chaired by Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson. Now, I just have a very hard time believing that Ron Johnson is on board with this garbage. I really do. The public, the American public, strongly supports border fence. And you can look at polls going back to April 2013. Rasmussen had a poll that said 67% of likely voters in the United States think that we should continue building strong border fence, with 29% disagreeing. Support for the fence has only grown since that poll, with peak numbers in the 89% range. Support for the fence is much higher among Republican voters than for Democrat voters, but that's to be expected. Now, there was a law passed in 2006 that required the construction of 700 miles of double-layer fencing along the 2,000-mile border. However, Congress quietly modified the bill in 2008 to allow the construction of simple, ineffective fences in place of the required double-layer fencing that was in the law. Officials claim that just over 600 miles of the border now have obstructions, including barriers. Whatever the hell that's supposed to mean. But those barriers include lines of bollards that are used to stop traffic and single-layer, what they call landing mat fencing, and only 36.5 miles of double-layer fencing. Now, McCall's bill calls for the replacement of the anti-pedestrian mat fencing and replacing it with anti-vehicle bollards, because we know how many of them drive across the Rio Grande and then into the desert into Texas, right? So the bollards, now you're going to love this part, okay? The bollards allow migrants, this is their nice way of saying illegal laborers, to be driven right up to the point of the border. Then they can walk across and get in a vehicle on the U.S. side that takes them to work and then brings them back in the evening, and they cross back over the border for overnight. Are you kidding me? I mean, really? I don't get it. It's anybody that's buying off on that, I don't know. Huge morons. Anyway, so if this thing passes, the language in this bill says that no later than 18 months after the date of enactment, the Secretary of Homeland Security shall replace, at a minimum, get these 5 items, okay? 31 miles of landing mat fences and replace it with bollard-style fencing. And that's along the San Diego sector of the border. Number 2 is 5 miles of the landing mat fencing replaced with bollard-style fencing in the El Centro sector of the border. The next step is 3 miles of landing mat fencing replaced with bollard fencing at the Yuma, Arizona sector. 3 miles for Yuma? Come on. Step 4 is 25 miles of the landing mat fencing being replaced with the bollards in the Tucson sector. And step 5 is 2 miles of the landing mat being replaced with the bollards in the El Paso sector. Now, this isn't rumor. This is actually on page 12 of House Bill H.R. 399. You can go look it up yourself. And with that, I say any Republican that votes for this should have their skin forcibly taken from their body and stretched over a pair of boots so that they will have done something useful with their time in Congress. All right, moving on. Another thing that's just sticking in my craw right now are the Iranian nuclear negotiations. Or so I should say, the so-called Iranian nuclear negotiations. 12 months and 2 6-month extensions later, the only way I can see them as representing anything that resembles progress, was the word President Obama used in the State of the Union address, is that they've helped Iran to progress with their nuclear program. So far, Iran hasn't been willing to make any deal, any concession. And even though Obama has done nothing but given up ground on key negotiating points like uranium enrichment, plutonium development, and missile technology. You know, little things like that. Meanwhile, stringing the U.S. along has provided Iran with a buttload of rich benefits. Now, as of last October, the Congressional Research Service calculated that Iran received $14 billion in relief up to that point last year. Now, this is what they call foreign aid. This is not the assets that Obama froze that he's been releasing. We're going to get to that. Just give me a few minutes. This is foreign aid from the United States. And they had received $14 billion to that point, and the benefits to Iran had averaged $700 million a month in 2014. At that pace, by the time the second deadline extension of July 1st rolls around, the tyrants in Iran will have received an economic windfall of $20 billion in foreign aid. These diplomatic victories have increased Iran's leverage, and now Iran is dictating the terms of negotiations as if the Islamic State and not the U.S. is the superpower. And sadly, with the way that Obama and Kerry are acting and reacting, that's exactly how I see it too. In this negotiation between Obama's administration and Rouhani, the president of Iran, Iran is the superpower, and we're the little pissant country sniveling for what we can get. Now, Iran has begun construction on 2 nuclear plants as negotiations with the Obama administration over its contested program continue in Geneva. Rouhani himself said that. And the construction of the plants, which Iran claims are for peaceful energy purposes, was revealed on Tuesday, the day before Secretary of State John Kerry was to meet with his Iranian counterpart in Geneva for more talks. Now, news of the 2 new plants came on the heels of reports that Iran has been operating advanced missile sites in Syria and also building a secret nuclear plant there. Yeah, in Syria. Rouhani touted the new nuclear construction following a meeting with investors in Iran's southern Bushehr province, where the nuclear facilities are being built. Construction of the new power plants will increase the capacity of the Bushehr province's power generation to 2,000 megawatts, Rouhani said. He also claimed that the new nuclear construction is proof of their peaceful intents on this front. The Bushehr nuclear power plant is an example showing that Iran is only looking for civilian use of nuclear energy and power generation, he was quoted as saying. The new plants are being constructed with help from Russia, which signed an agreement in March with Iran to aid in the endeavor. I'm sure that Obama really liked that because Putin just one-upped him again. The State Department spokesman didn't immediately respond to a request for comment about Rouhani's announcement, but Kerry lied to reporters in Geneva on Wednesday, saying that both sides are working hard, quote unquote, working hard to reach a final agreement later this year. If there were any hard work going on, as Kerry suggests, this crap would have been over with before the first deadline ever got close enough to see with a flashlight. And, Iran would be right now suffocating under increased sanctions that Congress wants to impose that would cripple every aspect of their economic abilities. And talks with Iran were extended through mid-2015, blah, blah, blah. Now, here's the kicker, okay? When this all started, when they first issued the sanctions against Iran, we froze their assets that were being held in the U.S., and Obama has incrementally released some of these assets in chunks of $490 million at a time. Now, we had made, at the time I wrote this, 2 payments of $490 million, and January 21st was supposed to be the 3rd installment of another $490 million, which would take us to, let's see, what is that? 9 times 3 is 27. That's 270 million, and that's 1.2. So $1.47 billion if the January 21st payment was made. I haven't seen any news on that yet, but there's absolutely nothing to suggest that Obama and Kerry found either spine or testicles and withheld payment, so I'm going to assume it was made. Iranian leaders announced earlier this week that Tehran is building an operating missile factory in Syria and has been fighting on behalf of embattled leader Bashar al-Assad. Now, think about this. This is who Obama is tiptoeing around and trying to negotiate with is Iran to try to get them to help shut down ISIS and Assad. And they're helping Assad the whole time. So let's get this right. Iran, in these ongoing talks, has conceded absolutely nothing and not only did not curtail its nuclear program, it actually accelerated it. And for Obama's part, he's lifted sanctions and given back $1.47 billion of Iranian cash assets. He's done nothing but display the weakness that his administration has been riddled with over its first 6 years. And he's kicking the can down the road with a country who sponsors terrorism around the globe and is developing weapons-grade uranium with the express intent of first wiping Israel, our only Middle Eastern ally, off of the map, then turning that weaponry on our European allies, and lastly, with the help of countries that will be Russia and other programs over there that back Iran's action more quietly, they'll be trying to reach us with them. So when they come after us, who do we have to blame? Because our idiot president is the one that made it all possible by lifting these sanctions and giving them over $1 billion, probably closer to $2 billion before it's all done, to help them get this program going. Look, folks, I love this country, but it irks me to no end to see our government kissing the collective asses of pedophile-worshipping goat rapists, people who have nothing but contempt for us, and would rather kill us more than anything, just as sure as the sun's going to rise in the east tomorrow morning. Now, that being said, after all of Obama's talking, it became abundantly clear what our word for the week had to be this week. And our word for the week this week is paramnesia. That's Paramnesia. And it means a condition in which the proper meaning of words cannot be remembered. And let me tell you, our president suffers from a debilitating form of paramnesia. He has spent 6 years redefining words and made it apparent Tuesday night that he's going to continue to do the same thing over the next 2 years because he just doesn't care anymore. Now, folks, I know I'm a little over 8 o'clock, and I know a lot of you are probably bolting already, but hang with me because I'm about to wrap this up. In closing tonight, I hope that the facts that I brought shine some light on a few of the things our government and our president are trying very hard to keep hidden from us, because these aren't readily available for people that just go out there and look and see what the government's doing. And for those that didn't know about these things, welcome to 2015. This is America run amok with liberalism and multiculturalism. This is what Barack Obama and his ilk have built. A chasm of nothingness would be easier to overcome. But don't you ever, ever underestimate the spirit of true patriotic Americans. We are fighting for and will continue to fight for our country. And folks, I hope that you've enjoyed the show, and I hope you have a great Thursday night and a great weekend coming up. And remember, if you did like the show, tell your friends. If your friends like it, you probably need some new friends, but I will be happy to have you and them here next week for the next installment of the Conservative Curmudgeon Show. God bless and good night.
We believe in the American way, and we built this country called the USA, and we fly our flag because we're proud and free, we're Americans. Red, white, and blue is our way of life. Never back down from a challenge or a fight. Nature provides, God gives the rights, we're Americans.